Good morning, good afternoon, evening, whatever time it is for you wherever you are. I hope you're having a good one. I'm sorry I'm going to have to speed through the pleasantries a bit here today since I have an important question to ask you. Do you think that we live in a simulation? Now, if we are, you were given the choice. Would you take the red pill or the blue pill? Does it even matter? Do you like the Matrix? All important questions, but basically, what I'm trying to know is have you experienced something that just didn't feel right? Something in the real world that emulates your stream when there's 30 seconds left in the game, they're fourth and one, and everything just sort of freezes, it speeds up, it vanishes, and it all comes back. Anything like that. You know, sometimes when I'm driving home from work or I'm driving anywhere at night, I'll see something sort of out of my periphery. Maybe it's a little tree that just doesn't look right. Maybe it just flashes a little bit. Maybe it's the lamp in the corner of the room. Maybe it just glitches out a little bit. And maybe it's nothing. It could be nothing. But maybe there's a little break in the code. Little glitch in the matrix. In philosophy and physics, they have their own opinions on the question of whether or not we're living in a simulation. But I think we need to expand beyond that a little bit. Push past just the tip of the iceberg here and ask ourselves the question, even if we are, would it matter? If you found out that all of your friends, your family, your memories, if everything in your entire life was just a singular line of code, would you care? Plato explored this in the quintessential Philosophy 101 reading, The Allegory of the Cave. And it has to be close to 10 years now since I've read it. But I think it boils down really to if what we feel like is being fed to us as reality, would that matter? How would we react to that? Because you see, in the dark and dingy cave, the prisoners inside said cave mistook the shadows projected on the wall as reality. Are we also then those prisoners? And everything that we are experiencing are merely just shadows. In a sense, it could feel like we're being lied to a little bit. Now, to take this passage straight out of the allegory of the cave, I wrote this one down, but it comes down to there being some sort of unseen mechanism that's producing these illusions for which we perceive then as reality. Or as Plato would say in the allegory, behold, human beings living in an underground den, which has a mouth open toward the light and reaching all along the den. Here they have been since childhood, and they have their legs and necks chained so that they cannot move and can only see before them, being prevented by the chains from turning round their heads. Above them and behind them, a fire blazing at a distance, and between the fire and the prisoners there is a raised way. And they can only see their own shadows or the shadows of one another, which the fire throws on the opposite wall of the cave. To them, the truth would be literally nothing but the shadows of the images. Now, Descartes, which kind of sounds like the name Carter, but just in a Boston accent, but Descartes even touched on this in Meditations on First Philosophy all the way back in the 1600s. But he said, I will suppose, therefore, that some malicious demon of the utmost power and cunning has employed all his energies in deceiving me. I shall think that the sky, the air, the earth, colors, shapes, sounds, and all external things are nothing but the delusions of dreams which he has devised to ensnare my judgment. Now, I want to note, and whether or not this is assuring or not, it's kind of irrelevant, but there is no proof that we are living in a simulation. There's only speculation and the idea that our reality behaves like information. Now, whether or not that information is encoded on, say, silicon, and we are living out our own version of The Sims, or if it's baked into the very fabric of the universe and space and time, has not been realized. Physics, however, has been uncovering some hard limits and informational seams that lend to reality being a potential pretty good candidate for simulation. Right now, in our current understanding, which is always changing, by the way, but in our current understanding, time and space themselves appear to have minimum units at the Planck scale. Pretty much, these are the smallest ticks of the cosmic clock and the finest grain of distance possible. It is below this in which all of our equations and understanding breaks down and gets thrown right out the window. But this could be attributed to sort of the smallest grid size within a simulation. And moving on over to the land of space, black holes, being the eternal eaters that they are, were once thought to swallow and erase whatever came close to them. Now, however, it seems that they encode information on their horizons, sort of like a cosmic hard drive. Our entire universe, put together, could be assumed to be one unbroken continuum. But once we start to pick everything apart, it seems more like a system, with processing limits, memory constraints, and storage rules. Now, what would happen if the simulation ran out of memory? What if it had too many Chrome tabs open? The interesting thing here is, in a sense, this sort of lends back to what Plato is talking about in the reality that we're fed. Now, physicist John Archibald Wheeler, he talked about this in the it from bit concept, which implies that physics, primarily quantum, isn't actually about reality, but rather it simply is our best description of what we observe. Now, John said that it from bit, otherwise put, every it, every particle, every field of force, even the space-time continuum itself, derives its very existence entirely from the apparatus elicited answers to yes or no questions. These are binary choices. They're bits. So, beyond the potential implications leading to whether or not there is a God, would it matter? Now, I suppose that the simulation could also then be one of God's divine creations, but that is not a topic I'm going to delve into right now. Right now, I want to ask you, if the sky flickered tomorrow and a big old message popped up saying, hey, this is a simulation, you're in a simulation, would your life change? Now, simulation or not, you still need to breathe, you still need to eat, and you still need to sleep. A simulated fire still burns, and the rules that we live under are still real enough to us. Ethically, I'm not really sure it matters too much either. Whether carbon-based or code-based, beings can still feel joy and pain and still deserve some moral concern. If anything, the simulation hypothesis may even enlarge the circle then of compassion, through there being even more conscious beings than we might have thought existed or are possible. I am going to close out with full wisdom from Seneca that should sort of extend beyond the potential existential dread that may come from the fact that we may or may not be living in a simulation. But Seneca said, "Life is long enough and has been given in sufficiently generous measure to allow the accomplishment of the very greatest things if the whole of it is well invested. But when it is wasted in heedless luxury and spent on no good activity, we are forced at last by the final constraint of death to realize that it has passed away before we knew that it was passing." Simulated or not, the true economy is time. What matters is not the fabric of the universe, but what you do with the hours that you are allotted. The challenge in our lives is still the same that it has always been: to live meaningfully with the constraints that we are given.